Who was Alexander Graham Bell? One day, in 1858, two young boys named Alec and Ben were horsing around in a flour mill owned by Ben's father. The boys leaped over bags of flour and ran past machines that ground up wheat. They were having fun, but they were bothering the mill workers who needed to do their work. Finally, Ben's father called the boys into his office. He told them to find something useful to do. What exactly would that be? Alec wanted to know. Ben's father picked up a handful of grain. Each piece of grain was covered in a thick husk. It would be useful if they could figure out a good way to get the husks off the wheat grain. The boys accepted the challenge. First, they scraped the husks off with a nail brush. It worked, but it took too long. They needed a faster way. Alec thought about the problem some more. He was good at solving problems. He remembered seeing a large vat with spinning paddles at the mill. The boys went and watched the vat at work. At last, Alec had an idea. What if stiff brushes, like big nail brushes, were attached to the vat's paddle? When the paddle brushes began spinning, the husk would be scraped off the wheat fast. Alec presented his idea to the band's father. The mill owner liked what he heard and put it to the test. Alec's idea worked. Maybe it's not so surprising that this 11-year-old boy grew up to become a world-famous inventor, the man who invented the telephone. Chapter 1. An Inventor is Born. On March 3, 1847, in Edinburgh, Scotland, a baby boy was born into the Bell family. He was named Alexander after both his grandfather and his father. Grandfather Bell lived in London and was a teacher. He helped young people with speech problems such as stuttering. Grandfather Bell studied the way spoken words are formed. He learned how important the lungs and vocal cords are for speaking. He studied the way the lips and the face moved too. Alexander's father, called Melville, taught speech too. From the moment baby Alexander was born, it was expected that he would follow in the other Alexander's footsteps. But what interested little Alec, as his family called him, was exploring. This boy, with a pale face, brown eyes, and dark bushy hair, loved roaming the Scottish countryside with his brothers, Melly and Ted. Alec collected all kinds of plants, rocks, and animal skeletons. One summer day in 1850, the Bell family went on a picnic. Young Alec wandered off to explore. A nearby wheat field caught his eye. He walked into the tall wheat and sat down. Closing his eyes, he wondered if he could hear the wheat growing. He strained his ears and listened, but he heard nothing. After a while, Alec decided to return to the picnic, but he couldn't find his way out of the wheat field. The wheat was too high. Alec was lost. He yelled for help. No one heard him. Little Alec sat on the ground and cried until he fell asleep. Later, he awoke to his father calling his name. Alec was safe. Sometimes curiosity could get a boy in trouble. Although Alec was smart, he was not a good student. Greek, Latin, math, and science, they all bored him. Plants and animals were much more interesting. He also loved music, and he learned to become an excellent pianist from his mother, Eliza. It was amazing that Mrs. Bell could play the piano so well. Why? Because she was nearly deaf. She needed an ear tube to help her hear. To play the piano, she put one end of the tube in her ear and the other against the piano. That way, she could feel or hear the beautiful sounds of the music. Alec was very close to his mother. Although most people shouted into her ear tube, Alec liked to put his mouth on her forehead and speak softly. And this worked. Elizabeth was able to hear what her son said. How was that possible? Eliza picked up the vibrations that Alec's word made when he put his lips on her head. A vibration is a steady movement or quiver. By talking to his mother this way, Alec began to understand how sounds travel and are heard. Elizabeth encouraged Alec to be curious and creative, but his father did not always approve. He wanted his middle son to be a good student like his brothers. Melville Bell often interrupted Alec's piano lessons. He'd drag the boy into the living room where Melville discussed science with friends. For Alec, it was boring, boring, boring. Even as a young boy, Alec wanted to be his own person. In fact, he was so independent that he chose a middle name for himself. It was just before he turned 11. A family friend named Alexander Graham came to visit. Alec liked the sound of the man's name. From that day on, Alec decided he would be called Alexander Graham Bell. Chapter 2, A Turning Point. In 1862, Alec finished high school. His father was still concerned about his middle son's lack of focus. The answer, Melville decided, was to send Alec to London to live with Grandfather Bell. Alec did not want to leave his mother or brothers, but Alec was put on the train anyway. Alec didn't know it, but he was setting off on a journey that would change his life. London was a very busy place. At the time, it was the world's largest city. There were palaces, grand cathedral, many theaters, and the House of Parliament, where the people in the government met. Alec was not used to seeing so many people in one place. Edinburgh was smaller. The air was cleaner. London was filled with pollution. The two cities were as different as could be. Alec also found living with Grandfather Bell very different. There were so many rules. One rule was that he had to dress like a gentleman. Whenever Alec stepped outside, he had to wear a dark suit, a stiff white shirt, and a tie. But that was not all. He also had to wear a top hat and gloves and carry a cane. Another rule was that Alec had to study 6 days a week. Many of the subjects, like Latin and history, still bored Alec. But it was thrilling to sit and watch his grandfather give speech lessons to students. Grandfather Bell let Alec travel around London by himself. Often, Alec went to the library. There, He read many books on sound. Later, Alec wrote, "This period of my life seems the turning point of my whole career." Indeed, it changed him from a carefree boy into a more serious young man eager to learn. When the year was up, Melville came to London. Before bringing his son home, they visited a famous inventor named Sir Charles Wheatstone. Sir Charles showed the bells an invention of his. It was a wooden box that had an accordion-like back on one side. The back was called a bellows. On the other side, there were levers and a leather tube. The tube led to a reed. A reed is used in musical instruments such as a saxophone. Sir Charles squeezes the bellows, pushing out air. At the same time, he squeezed the leather tube and moved the levers. The moving air made the reed vibrate, and out came words. The words were hard to understand, but still, the machine talked. Back in Edinburgh, Melville challenged Alec and Melly to create a speaking box like Charles Wheatstone's. Only theirs had to be better. The brothers got to work. Melly made the lungs and the throat. Alec made the tongues and the mouth. It was important to shape the tongue, lips, and mouth carefully. If not, words would not come out clearly. After putting their speaking machine together, they took it to the bottom of the stairway in their house. Melly blew through the throat, which he had made out of tin. Alec worked the part of the mouth. Finally, sounds came out. "Mama, Mama," a little voice said. The voice sounded so real. The Bell's upstairs neighbors thought a baby was crying. Melly and Alec had met their father's challenge. Indeed, the talking machine started Alec on the path that led to his invention of the telephone.